Hi, this is Mike Maloney from goldsilver.com, and boy, do we have an interview for you today. First, I want to extend a special thanks to Lee Greenberg for setting up this interview. Good job, Lee. Our guest was born in 1942. He has degrees in history, philosophy, politics, and economics. In 1973, he and George Soros co-founded the Quantum Fund. In 1980, he retired. Yeah, right. In 1990, he decided to take a little motorcycle trip. 2 years and 6 continents later, his little trip landed him in the Guinness Book of World Records and was the material for his subsequent book, Investment Biker. In 1998, he founded the Rogers International Commodity Index. In 1999, he took another little trip. And 3 years and 116 countries later, he once again made it into the Guinness Book of World Records and wrote the book, Adventure Capitalist. He is one of the earliest to identify the real estate bubble, which subsequently popped, and the debt bubble, which has yet to pop. In 2011, he started the Rogers Global Resources Equity Index, which focuses on the top companies in agriculture, mining, metals, and energy. He is also the author of Hot Commodities, A Bull in China, and A Gift to My Children. He is currently based in Singapore, and he is a huge proponent of getting government out of the way and letting the free markets work. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Rogers. How are you doing, Jim?
Oh, gosh, Mike, I should hang up now after hearing that introduction. Thank you.
Well, you've done more in your lifetime than, some people have been around the block. You've been around the world. You have the most international perspective on what's going on financially on the global markets than anybody I know of. You have firsthand knowledge of investing in China and on these trips, you were investigating the markets in all of these countries and you were doing investment in many of them, weren't you?
Well, yes, I've always had a fascination with the world. Looking back, even when I was a teenager in a small town in Alabama, I always wanted to know about the world, so I guess I've had this madness for many decades now.
Yeah, you're also a student of history, and it seems like we're doomed to repeat it. All of the politicians either don't know any history, or they're making the easy decisions, the ones that please the public. And they're basically saying, well, that didn't work the last 100 times we tried it, so why don't we do it again? What do you think? Is
exactly.
history repeating?
Many of them who, quote, think they know history have some sort of distorted view of history, which is not very real. But anyway, yes, I'm fascinated with history. I'm fascinated with the world. I'm fascinated with all sorts of things.
So what's your outlook like long term? What do you think is going to happen with the U.S. dollar?
Well, unfortunately, Mike, as you probably know, the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debts are skyrocketing at a rapid rate now. Mr. Obama and Mr. Bush just did disastrous things to the U.S. balance sheet. Not that Clinton and the others didn't do their part too, but the last two guys have really wrecked our balance sheet, the U.S. balance sheet. Unfortunately, history shows that whenever countries have gotten themselves into this kind of situation, they don't get out without a crisis or a semi-crisis. I have no idea if it will happen or when it will happen, but history's pretty clear. You don't just wake up one day and say, oh, well, that was a shame. Now let's move on to something else. So, no, the dollars are very flawed currency, and somewhere in our lifetimes, probably within this decade even, you're going to see lots more problems with the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think personally, the dollar as it exists today as just a debt-backed currency, a fiat currency, is doomed. And in my research, every 30 to 40 years or so, the world has a new monetary system, and we are overdue. So I believe that crisis is going to happen sometime in this decade. But, Ron Paul, Bernanke was testifying to Congress a few months back, and Ron Paul asked him, is gold money? And first, Bernanke looked like a deer caught in the headlights. And then he started to hem and haw, and eventually he came up with, well, central banks hold it because it's tradition. What do you think of the chairman of the largest central bank on the planet that controls the vast majority of the world's currency that doesn't know that gold is money?
Well, I would have to say to you, Mike, Mr. Bernanke's never been right about anything, at least since he went to Washington. I don't know much about his career before that. But if you go back and look at Mr. Bernanke's pronouncements, since he got down to Washington, 8 years ago, whenever it was, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, he's never, ever been right about anything. So whenever I hear him say something, I obviously get very worried and figure out what my first reaction is. I should look the other way or figure out the other side of his his pronouncements. And that's true here too. I mean, gold. I think he said that gold is not money, at least not right now, and that factually is correct. I don't think anybody in the world uses gold as money today, at least money per se. But it certainly has been used as money for most of the past few thousand years. Now, other things have too. Silver, seashells, lots of things. But gold has certainly had a long tradition of being used as money.
Yeah, well, the fact that the chairman of the Fed doesn't seem to know this is a bit worrying, I think. But okay, there's a
Mike,
cycle.
I want to repeat again. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done an expose, Mr. Bernanke, because he's never. You look at any pronouncement that he's made, it's never been right. It's dumbfounding, whether he's talking about housing or doesn't matter. Markets, the economy, the currencies. It's just scary how little the man knows about finance, currencies, the economy. All he knows about is printing money. He's a typical Ivy League professor who studied one thing all of his life, and no matter what he sees it through the lens of, let's print more money. It's a saying, I forget exactly what it is, something like, for a man who's got a hammer, everything he sees is a nail. Well, Mr. Bernanke is a money printer, and everything he sees is run the printing presses.
And that means that the currency continually loses purchasing power. And eventually, I believe gold and silver do an accounting of the expansion of the fiat currency supply. And they've done this throughout history. I think that it's inevitable. And so I think that anybody that's holding dollars doesn't realize that they are invested in dollars. They think they've got savings, but they are actually making a decision to invest in U.S. dollars. If they've got a savings account or an IRA, it's denominated in U.S. dollars. They've got a money market fund.
Oh, that's most insightful, and I hope everybody listening to this it will sink in, because I can remember many times in history where people have said, I'm going to be conservative, and they put their money in cash. If you have it in the wrong cash, Mike, you're going to lose a lot of money. As well, a few years ago, a lot of people put their money in Icelandic krona to be safe. It was high yielding. Well, they lost their shirts. But not just throughout history, the last few years, that's happened to many people, and it will continue to happen. Even if you have cash, you can go bankrupt if you've got the wrong cash.
Yes. There's a cycle that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people that do know about it don't believe in it. But I can sort of feel it happening, and it's called the East-West Cycle, where roughly every 500 years, the East will become predominant when it comes to their prosperity, their leadership in technology, and then it shifts to the West. It used to be Europe, now it's Europe and North America. And you can feel it shifting back to the East. And you have been a leader in investigating all of the Asian economies and seeing where the opportunities lie. Can you tell us whether or not you believe in this East-West cycle, and if you see it happening right now?
Well, Mike, throughout history, Asia has had recurring periods of greatness. In fact, if you look back over the last 2,000 or 3,000 years, most of the time Asia has been on top. There have been a few centuries when the West was on top, but that's few and far between. For whatever reason, India, China, other Asian nations have been staggeringly successful most of the time. And in my view, it's happening again. I don't say this as something I care about it, obviously, but something that I'm positive and negative on. It's a fact. It's a simple fact, whether you like it or not. Asia's on the rise. The largest creditor nations in the world now are China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. This is where the assets are, and you know who the debtors are and where they are. I mean, people can say this is not good all day long. I don't want to get into that discussion. All I can tell you is it's happening, and one has to face reality.
Yeah. You're based in Singapore. You used to live in New York, and before that you were born in the South. You were a resident of New York for many years, and now you live in Singapore. What do you see? I mean, what are the differences that you have in freedom, in business, in opportunity, in, say, Singapore versus the U.S.? Why did you move to Singapore?
Again, to repeat myself, the assets are all in Asia now. Throughout history, you've never heard the great mass of people say, "Let me see all those debtors over there. Why don't we go join all those debtors?" Throughout history, people have said, "Look at where the money is. Look at those assets. Let's go where the assets are." And the assets are in Asia again. This is where opportunities are. Certainly one can stay in debtor nations. The UK went from, in 1918, from being the most powerful country in the world to being bankrupt in 3 generations. But still, a lot of people stayed in the UK and had fun and made money. It can be done. It's just a lot easier to make a successful life, a happy life, in places that are on the rise rather than places that are on the decline. So since Asia's on the rise, I have brought my children. My children both speak perfect Chinese and perfect English, of course, to Asia. They may not stay in Asia, but I'm trying to prepare them for the 21st century. I think the best skills that I can give them are to know Asia and to speak Mandarin. After that, it's up to them. That's not going to make them successful, but it's going to give them skills which many other people don't have.
Excellent. Years ago, Robert Kiyosaki, I don't know if you know Robert Kiyosaki, but he told me that if I wanted to attract more gold and silver, to keep a coin in my pocket, a gold or a silver coin. And I've done that for many years, and I'm told that you keep a coin in your pocket. Can you tell us what it is, if you do, and what it means to you?
Yes, I nearly always have 2 or 3 silver and gold coins in my pocket. Never not know when you might need a little silver or a little gold. I sometimes give them as gifts to people. Usually they're very surprised when I do so. But no, I'm an avid. Well, let's say this: I do own gold and silver. I own precious metals because I expect the precious metals bull market to last at least for several more years.
I'm of the same opinion. I think it could last to the end of this decade, possibly. A currency crisis would speed that up, definitely. And we'd see gold and silver, I believe, skyrocket if we have a dollar crisis. But anyway...
Well, it's not just a dollar crisis. There could be current crises in many currencies. Pound sterling, euro, you see what's happened in the past few years. The yen, I can name many currencies that can have problems or turmoil going forward. But usually in those kinds of periods, owning precious metals or real assets, not just precious metals, agriculture, oil, energy, other metals, usually the best way to protect yourself is with precious metals.
Yeah, precious metals and real things, like you said, the commodities and energy.
Yes, real assets. I mean, there may be times when you'll make more money in wheat than you will in gold, but I, anyway, own both.
Well, I want to thank you very much. This has been a wonderful interview, and I look forward to seeing you someday when you're in the United States.
Well, thank you very much, Mike, and then let's do it again sometime.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So wasn't that a great interview? And for you folks listening over the internet, thanks for listening. This is Mike Maloney from goldsilver.com. Have a nice day.